My name is Drew Regner. I'm an instructor at the Benteh STEAM Academy, and this is
Thomas with Benteh STEAM Academy also.
Today we're going to be making yo-yos. So here's an example of a traditional set of yo-yos. I'll let Thomas show you how to play with a yo-yo. In your kit, you will have 4 leather circles, 2 will have holes.
2 will not.
You'll have 2 strips of beaver fur, a strand of sinew. You'll have a needle. This one is a tri-tip needle, so it's made for leather, so be very careful. It can stab into your skin really easy. You have a caribou antler, so this will be for your handle. You'll have these little glass weights. These will go inside to weight down your yo-yo so it spins nicely. You'll have a string, so you can string up your yo-yo to your handle, and you'll have stuffing. So this is all that you need to make your own set of yo-yos. To start off with, you're going to take your sinew and you're going to split your sinew. To do this, you can start at the edge if it's already splitting, or you can start in the middle and just pull it apart.
Are we splitting into 2s or 4s?
We're going to split it into 4s. And we just pull the sinew apart. Once you split your sinew, thread your needle. What I like doing is putting the needle on, and I run all the way to the end and match up these ends. I tie a figure 8 knot. You can tie an overhand knot. Figure 8, you make an 8. You go over, under, and there's our 8. And then we go back through the hole that we started from. And you can see how it makes a figure 8. Pull that one. Makes a nice knot on the end. It's a nice loop.
Is there a reason why you double yours as to a single strand?
You can do both ways. I double mine because I like having a lot of sinew, so the forces on this don't start ripping. If you don't double, sometimes the leather can start ripping in here or the thread can come apart. So this one, if one of the threads frays, the other thread holds it tight. So you take your piece of leather, you decide how you want it to be. We're going to be starting with our top. The reason we start with the top is when we do this, our seam is going to be inside out. So when we make it, we're going to be sewing everything inside out. And when we flip it, we're going to get a really nice seam. And you can look at it on these yo-yos. You have a really nice seam that's hidden. Versus on the underside, you get to see some of the spots that have the thread.
Like this one.
On this one, you have to decide which way you want your hair to go. So this one, it looks like the hair is more naturally flowing this way, and I want my hair to be flowing down. It's up to you. If you want your hair to be flowing up, you can. If you look, here's the yo-yo, here's the hair flowing down, that would be the hair flowing up. So whatever way you want to do it, just make sure they match. So when I started, I'm going to start with these 2 pieces pinched together, and I'm going to put the hair side on the inside, and you sort of want to push your hair down and then put your needle through. And I pull the thread through. It's okay if the hair comes through with it. And right as you get to the end of this loop, I put my needle through the loop, and then I pull it tight, and it's tight on. So now it's a really easy stitch. We call this just a loop stitch. So we just make a stitch, pull it through. And I'm always going on the circle, not from the beaver side. This lets me push the hair down and put a stitch through. And if you notice, I'm doing my stitches about 1/8 of an inch.
Is there a reason why you do it so close together?
It makes a finer stitch and the seam looks a little bit nicer. And normally as we go, we get tired and our stitch starts to run away from us anyways. So by the end, our 1/8 of an inch stitch probably turns into a 1/4 of an inch stitch. And if we do it the other way, our 1/4 of an inch starts to turn into a 3/8 of an inch. And it's a little bit bigger.
I think too, depending on what we have for the weights on the inside, will determine the size of your stitch that you need.
If you're using smaller weight like lead weight or split shots, you'd probably want an even finer stitch. Or if you're using sand, you might want a finer stitch also. We could get away with doing bigger stitches, but it looks nice with little stitches. Sometimes it just gets wrapped up in the thread. So you loosen that stitch a little bit and you can pull it up. Here's a different way to hold if you want. You can go the back way, push in. As we continue to go, you always want to check to make sure that the remaining beaver fur and the remaining part of the circle should match up pretty close. And if not, you may want to take in a little bit every once in a while. And instead of doing it just stitched evenly, you stitch a little bit extra on the beaver fur and a little bit less on the leather, and it will make it so it fits. So this one I have a little bit of a bubble, not much, so I'm going to show you how to do that. So instead of going 1/8 of an inch on the leather or on the beaver fur, I'm going to go about 1/4 of an inch and put my needle through. So like that. And what that's going to do is when we tighten it, it's going to do a little bubble. And that will just take in some of the slack. So now when we do our next stitch, we just do our next stitch normal. So we go through about 1/8 of an inch away, and 1/8 of an inch, and we pull it tight, and you can see how that little bubble forms right there. And that makes it so we have a little bit less room that we have to worry about at the end. I don't do them all in a row. I'll do about one of those and then 2 stitches.
Is there a reason why you separate them so much?
It makes that little bubble right there, where it just takes it in, and I separate them so that you don't see it too much here. Because if you look on the other side, it gives you a little weird blip, but if you separate them out, you can't really see them. So here we go, that was 2 stitches after. So I'm going to go in 1/8 of an inch, and then I'm going to go out about 1/4 of an inch, like so. And pull it tight, and then just return to my normal stitches again. As you get near the end, you can have a little bit of overlap. That's perfectly fine. That lets you stitch it. But it gets a little bit harder to control, so just make sure you're pinching it nicely. I pinch it with my thumb and my index finger, and make sure you don't hit your thumb with the needle. Now, part of the reason that we did the top first is so when we put our thread through and when we flip it over, we have a nice seam on the top where our thread is hidden, and instead of putting on a new needle and tying it off, we can just start sewing up this edge right away. Once you get to a certain point, you're going to want to tie a knot in your thread and put in a new thread. So to tie a knot, I'm just going to go through, and as I'm pulling this loop, I'm just going to go through the loop, pull it tight. And you could tie it, cut it there. I like going one more time, and I go through that loop that we just did, and I put the thread through the loop again, pull it tight. And there's your knot. Now you can cut that knot off with the scissors. You don't have to worry about cutting it really short because once again, this is all going to be inside the yo-yo. Then we take another thread, thread it through the eye, and once again, I like pulling all the way double. You don't have to. You could do it all single, and if you did the single, you probably wouldn't have to tie a knot. And I like tying a figure 8. So once again, over, under, through the loop. And then I pull it tight with my fingers over the knot. That way your knot's not up here and you just have a little bit of a tail. Then we pull it so that our needle is nice and even. We can start stitching again. So that's our next step. We're going to sew up the edge. So what we do is we take all of our fur and we push our fur together. Okay, so here's our leather sandwiched together with all of our fur on the inside. You can use your needle to help push that down. And we're going to do the same stitch. We're just going to start, we go over, and we push through. And then make sure your needle doesn't go through the loop. And then I just push my fur down, needle through.
You're not worried about this excess sitting right there?
No, I'm not worried about that. If you are, you can go through with your needle and push it through. But that's under fur, and you can just cut it off afterwards. And if your entire bottom part looks like that, if there's fur going all the way through, that's okay also. You can leave it or you can trim it if you really want to, but it's going to be inside your yo-yo and nobody's ever going to see it. I just fixed a common mistake that could happen and I'll show it to you again. Sometimes your needle gets out of position or you pull one of the threads too much. So I'm going to pull one of the threads too much. And you'll start pulling and you'll get a loop that happens like that. Make sure you fix that right away, and you do that just by grabbing one side. That's the side that's tight. Grab the other side, pull that one tight. And then you can pull the needle so it's right at the end again. Just an easy fix, but sometimes it happens, and if you don't fix it right away and it's back here, it's hard to fix it when you get up close. Try to keep the same distance from the leather. So as you're stitching, I keep going about 1/8 of an inch every time, and I'm going about 1/8 of an inch in from the leather. Try to keep that the same distance, otherwise your seams, when you flip it inside out, look a little bit weird. Here we're reaching about to the end, so be really careful with your fingers again so you don't end up stabbing yourself. And I just am pinching lower on the leather and doing the final stitch through that part. Now we have that seam tied. You can flip fur side out and check it to see how it looks. And so far it looks pretty good. Now what you can do on this side, once you flip it out, to look at it and see how everything is going. And if you make mistakes, it's okay. I made a mistake right here. I really don't know what I did. I just caught a random piece of leather in one of my stitches. But we can take our parachute cord I'll put it through the hole in the top, and we're going to tie a nice big knot in this. So you can do an overhand knot. There's an overhand knot. That will work. It won't come through. You could do a figure 8 knot. It makes it a little bit more bulky. So you go over, under, and then through the loop. The most secure knot is the one I'm going to do next, which is called a blood knot or a barrel knot. That one, you make a loop and you go through, go through, go through. So that makes a nice big loop. You could loop it through one more time if you want to, doesn't matter. If you have enough of a tail, you can loop it through so it's a big knot that won't go through that hole. Now,
it's a needle.
Yep. We're going to be sewing all of this part and we're going to be flipping it inside out again. So when you're sewing, we now have this rope in here that we sort of have to keep out of the way. So I just do that when I'm sewing. We'll just keep it over here when I'm holding the fur and the leather. Take one of the leather pieces, make sure it doesn't have a hole in it because this is the bottom. And we're going to sew this the same exact way all the way around till we have about an inch left.
Why are you leaving that inch?
That inch is going to be big enough to put our weight in and also to put our stuffing in.
So do you want to have your weight at the top, the middle, or the bottom?
I like having my weight at the bottom because eventually it goes to the bottom anyways. If your weight starts at the top, it'll work your way through the stuffing and get to the bottom. If you put it in the middle, it'll work its way to the bottom anyways.
So it'd probably be best when you get to the stuffing part to do your stuffing first and then your weights at the bottom.
Yes, that it is. Okay, we're going to start sewing the bottom again. This leather doesn't matter, this is suede, so both sides are the same. If you have one of our other pieces of leather, there's a shiny side and a suede side. Whatever side you want on the bottom, make sure it just matches the top. Otherwise, so this is the shiny side, or you could have a suede side which is sort of fluffier. Just make sure that your top and your bottom match on all of them. Okay. We're going to start this again of making sure our fur is pushed down, and then we start threading through. So we start our stitch, I'm going to push the needle through, then we just keep pushing our fur down. And depending on which way works best for you, you can stitch it this way, or I'm going to turn it around a little bit. I'm going to stitch it this way. So I like doing this one because I can pinch here with my thumb and keep the fur down. And I would recommend doing our felt yo-yos first with the electronics on them, because the felt yo-yos will give you a really good idea of how they go together. And then you can do the traditional yo-yos, and they might be a little bit easier. Okay, so we keep pinching, starting the new thread, put the thread through, and you could just pull it tight. That knot's not going to go through the leather, but I like going through the loop. Makes me feel like my stitch is more secure, especially because weight's going to be pushing against that, so I want it to be as secure as possible.
And if you were worried about this little bit left over right here, you could have pulled that through and stitched that along to hold that down. To have some extra security in case you were worried about your knot too, right?
Yep. Yeah, we could put the stitch right through those loops as we're pulling it tight. Getting that right in there. Just make sure that hair is pushed down and continue your stitch. Once you get to about an inch left, there's about an inch left on there, we're going to flip it inside out or first side out again. And to do that, we're going to carefully push from the top and push everything through that little hole. If it's too small, it's going to be difficult to flip inside out, and too large means that you'll be able to see the threads even more. So we just work at this, carefully pushing it right side out. Now, we're going to put our stuffing in. So we have a big bunch of stuffing, divided into about 2 even piles. There we go. And we're going to take the stuffing, and without making your thread go in with it, we're just going to push the stuffing inside the yo-yo. Okay, so there's most of the stuffing in. Now we're going to put 3 of these weights in. I'm going to evenly, looks like we'll go like this. There we go. Those look even in weight. You can feel them. They feel about even in weight. And we're just going to slide these in. And there's the last one slid in. Now, we're going to sew up the next seam. So you want to make sure your hair is pulled out away from the leather. The stuffing stays in. And we're going to sew up the last little bit of this. I think I'm going to put last little bit of stuffing in. Okay. Now, we get our thread ready to go again. And this one, we're going to be stitching a little bit inside out. So this one we're going to hold our fur away, like that with our finger. And I'm going to stitch through my beaver fur.
And this is the time they're going to have to really watch where their fingers are placed, because they're not going to be able to see it.
And now I'm going to go on the top side and into the stuffing, and then through the leather on the beaver fur into the beaver hair. And I like keeping my thread this side, so when I pull my needle, it doesn't catch all of the beaver fur. And then pull it tight. And then we do it again. I brush the hair down with my finger through the top side of the leather and then through the beaver fur, making sure not to stick yourself. Make sure your thread is down here away from the fur and pull it tight. And I'm going to do one last stitch right here. So I brush my fur down through this little spot.
Is this where you're going to put your ending knot?
Yep. So this one, don't pull it all the way tight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through, and this time I'm going to pull this one tight here. I'm going to pull the loop on my knot, and I'm going to go through that loop again, and that will tie the knot. I pull that tight, and there's my knot. So as you can see, you get a little bit of the seam right there. That's why We do it on the bottom side, so when we push it up, you don't see the seam as much. To finish this, you can cut that thread. If you want to finish it with a lighter, make sure you get your parents' or your guardian's approval. So cut about an inch and make sure the hair is pushed away.
Because that hair will torch quick.
Yeah, and you don't want to smell burnt hair. So we pull the hair away, we light that, and then we touch it with the bottom. And that will stick that knot really good. And then you brush it down, or if your hair is going up, you want to brush your hair whichever way your hair lies, and you have a yo-yo. Or a yo.
You have a yo. That's got some good weight to it. This has the same amount of weight as
Both of those.
both those put together.
You have a little antler piece in your kit. This is your handle for your yo-yo. Some people use a soft handle like leather. Some people prefer the hard leather or hard like ivory or antler. To put this on, you want to make sure your yo-yos are different lengths, so one is shorter than the other one. And you can do this with your yo-yo on or without, because you can adjust it later on. So I take this loop and I pinch it really hard down, and then we're going to feed it through the hole in the antler. And I just twist it through. Twist it till it comes out. Then get a big enough loop that you can put your yo-yo through and your other line, both yo-yos if you have both yo-yos done, and you start pulling it tight. And I'll pull down from this side, and we just make a loop right on the antler. So that's where you can hold it. Now, if you want to adjust it, it's pretty easy. Like if you want to make this one longer and this one shorter, you push this one up. So there, makes it shorter. Pull the loop through till it's tight, and then pull it from the other one. And you can adjust the size. Now, last thing we need to do is make the other part of the yo-yo, so we don't just have a yo. And that's how you make your yo-yos. Thank you for making them with me. Go back and look through all the parts as much as you need to figure out how to make them. If you have questions, contact us and we can answer them. I'll show you the entire thing set up. So if you notice, your lengths are different sizes. So one is shorter than the other. Your caribou antler is there. And if you need to change the sizes, you can just play with your knot up on top and change the different sizes. As you play with them more, you'll start to see what the difference in the size of how they need to be to make them go nicely. So have fun making, have fun creating. Check out Jeff and Bree's next video. They're going to show you how to make high-tech yo-yos using sewable electronics. You can find that here. And don't forget to like and subscribe and see our next videos. Thank you.